I want to welcome you today to our special time and a special meeting of Central Houston, where we will focus on the state of our wonderful performing arts venues in our theater district in downtown. Let me take a moment before we jump into our today's topic, just to tell you how much and how grateful we are to you, the members, for what you have been able to support us, how you've been able to support us over this year with the pandemic, and frankly, your great efforts. And as we've really been able to continue to make progress over this period of time. Frankly, we couldn't do it without you. There's just no way around that. And we're just deeply, deeply grateful to you for your continued support for all that we do at Central Houston. I'd like to take a moment here to just say that we're so excited about a comeback. You can feel it. I could feel it this morning as I drove in. It was actually felt like more traffic, and so it's so exciting to be coming back. And but the comeback's far more than just work. The comeback is that all parts of downtown are coming back, and more, I think you've heard this said, that for downtowns in particular, it's much more than work that really brings us back. It's really the fact that you can live here. It's all the wonderful things that you can do. You can take in a sporting event, you can take in arts, culture, wonderful food and beverage establishments, and I could go on and on. Many outdoor events, our wonderful public spaces. All of this is sort of coming back together, and that is what this is really all about. So it's wonderful to be able to take a moment today and have you with us as we really explore what's happening as we come back with our theater district. As you know, the theater district is the second largest performing arts district in America. I'm so proud of that. And it just continues to thrive and grow. Just mentioning a couple things right from the top, we have been, through the Downtown Redevelopment Authority, been involved in the rebuilding of Bagby Street, which is finishing up through the theater district. And as you come back, it'll be completed. It's very exciting to see the progress on Post Houston. That's the old Barbara Jordan Post Office up on the north end of the theater district. It's going to be an exciting multi-venue place, including a large performance venue within. And then finally, and of tremendous excitement to us, we broke ground on May 14th. Houston First is in the lead on this, at a project to rebuild Jones Plaza as Lynn Wyatt Square. We're so grateful to the Wyatt family for their tremendous lead gift that's been matched by the Downtown Redevelopment Authority to be able to move this project forward. And so we've broken ground, and actually we're beginning to tear things down. Maybe that's the way you say it when you have something like Jones Plaza. So we're very excited to look forward to about 15 months from now as Lynn Wyatt Square opens as a wonderful new green Hart for our theater district. So with that, that leads us into today. We're so thrilled to have Holly Clapham Rosenau as our moderator. I think she's such a wonderful person to have with us today, because she, for all of us, has the lead role of really promoting Houston as a destination. And as you will find out, arts performance is a very large piece of what makes Houston attractive to those who come, especially for leisure visits to our city as we go forward. So Holly's the Chief Marketing Officer, Houston First Corporation. She's been at it. She does a wonderful job, and we're so thrilled to have her with us today, and she will introduce our panelists.
Thank you so much, Bob. Hello, everyone. As you may know, Houston First is the official destination management organization for Houston. Basically, my team, the marketing division, is all things Houston. We promote, sell, and study our city every day. And before we positioned Houston as a cultural capital, we conducted years of research, which is ongoing. I'm going to share some of the most recent research with you. In 2019, 66% of those surveyed by one of our research firms, Destination Analysts, stated that they preferred destinations with arts and culture. In fact, that was the second highest ranking, just below friends and family. That same year, both performing arts and museums ranked among the top 10 reasons people chose to visit Houston. And in 2019, more than 2/3 of Houstonians saw their city as a place that had something for everyone, was culturally diverse, had a variety of entertainment options, great place for visiting friends and family, and also rich in cultural and performing arts. This year, we've expanded our research profile, studying Houston in a holistic fashion as a place to live, work, study, and visit. We have 2 global research firms working collaboratively on several studies, with results anticipated late summer. I anticipate seeing the importance of cultured cities once again rising to the top. But today, I really want to start off with some perspective. Prior to the pandemic, the nation's arts and culture sector was a $919 billion industry that supported more than 5 million jobs and represented 4% of the nation's economy. According to the American for the Arts survey from just this month, nationally, financial losses to nonprofit arts and cultural organizations is estimated at $16 billion. That same study cited financial loss to local area businesses such as restaurants, lodging, retail, parking, shopping by canceled arts and cultural events at $16.6 billion and audience ancillary spending. And that same study by Americans for the Arts calculates that in Texas, more than 1,400 cultural organizations that have been impacted with a total financial loss of nearly 140 million. Texas ranks just below New York and Florida on this survey. The truth is that no one survey can reflect the true impact on arts and culture. But what we do know is that the light is here at the end of the tunnel, and it's getting brighter every day. And today I'm excited that we are talking about the art of reopening. But before we go into the panel discussion, I want to encourage everyone to take advantage of the open discussion part of the conversation by placing your Q&As into the Zoom box in front of you. Don't forget to do that, because that's going to be how we wrap up the presentation. So thank you to our panelists, Hillary Hart, the Executive Director for Theater Under the Stars, Houston's leading nonprofit musical theater dedicated to enriching lives through innovative musical theater, inclusive educational curriculums, and dynamic community engagement. Dean Gladden, Managing Director of the Alley Theater, who is celebrating his 15th season and is responsible for all things administrative, financial, marketing, facility operations, and development aspects of the resident company, which is a nationally acclaimed theater. Dean's career in the performing arts spans over 40 years. And Jim Nelson, Executive Director of the Houston Ballet, who has served for nearly 2 decades as an administrative leader of the resident company. And during his tenure, Jim pursued an aggressive initiative to building a large-scale ballet and expanding the ballet's international exposure. So let's get right into it. Jim, the Houston Ballet will kick off the season on September 30th with Margaret Alkeck Williams' Jubilee of Dance. Dean, the Alley Theater will celebrate milestone 75th anniversary on October 1st with 3 world premiere plays, a world premiere musical, and a Pulitzer Prize winning play. And Hillary, Tuts will kick off the season on October 5th with Rock of Ages, which will be a full 18 months since your last performance ticket was sold. Recently, you were quoted in the HBJ as stating, "The coming schedule of performances this fall will be the most critical in the organization's history." And I'm sure this sentiment is shared by all of you. So your first question is, can each of you talk about the upcoming season and what it means from the perspective of the performers, the audience, and the administration?
I'll go first, at least on behalf of TETS. I mean, I think the FY22 season is going to be critical for all of us in the Arts District, but not only here in Houston, I think across our country. I think, as with most other performing arts organizations, while individual events like Hurricane Harvey had posed a threat to our operations and a rolling recovery, I think this pandemic has actually posed what I don't mean to be hyperbolic but in saying, but is an existential crisis in our industry across the country. There are a lot of organizations that are going to be faced with cash flow issues that have never had cash flow issues before, because we've been using deferred revenue from 2020 to keep our organizations, the doors open and alive and going. And so the idea that we're now on this precipice of the light at the end of the tunnel, it's not a train. We have the opportunity to do what we do best, which is build community through our art forms, bringing people together 2 hours at a time in the dark, just to have that opportunity is going to be important and critical for artists to be able to leave what I would consider to be probably survival jobs in a lot of ways that truthfully were probably higher risk in terms of being in an uncontrolled environment, where all of us are now very much deep into making sure that we're providing safe and sanitary places for our artists and for our guests to visit us again. It's exciting, as you said, it's exciting. It's something to be celebrated, but it is not going to be easy for all of the arts organizations across our city to do that.
Yeah, I would say that we are all thrilled, first of all, to be live again. And we're tired of the Zoom world. We're tired of recorded world. We existed in that world because we had to, but there is nothing better than a live experience and sitting in the theater and seeing these great performers on the stage. So we have a lot to celebrate, and we're very excited about coming back. The challenge that Hillary talks about is we don't know how the community is going to respond. We know that a lot of people will feel safe coming back. Some people will be hesitant coming back. And so the first year will be the most challenging of all as we open. And if I can encourage everyone out there, I would say, come to the theater and see what we're doing and have fun. We are desperate to have our audiences back.
And Jim.
Thanks, Holly, and thanks, Bob, for inviting us to speak to the membership. So you'd ask about our upcoming season, and I think both Hillary and Dean, along with the ballet, we're planning a full season. So this is not coming back kind of half strength. This is coming back to pre-pandemic levels of programming. So our audiences should expect the first-rate performances that they know us for. And we're thrilled to be back fully. Most of us are starting a little bit later, so generally we start the 1st of September. We're starting at the end of September and running one program instead of two, but then we go to Nutcracker and have a regular run of Nutcracker, and then we finish out with 5 more programs February through June. So a full season of programs, and we're very excited about that. You'd ask about what it means from the perspective of the performers and the administration. Well, it's a return to life as they knew it. There was so much uncertainty in the performing arts, and so this is light at the end of the tunnel. But one thing that's really important, and I can speak on behalf of the ballet, Harvey followed by the pandemic has really just hammered our subscription base. Folks, our nearest and dearest have really stuck with us, but a lot of folks haven't. A lot of folks that have been affected by Harvey or affected by the pandemic and have dropped their subscription. And our subscription is the pipeline to, major supporters, long-term supporters, life supporters. So this is a multi-year recovery. You'll see our performers back on stage and people back in the theater, but the effects of the pandemic are not over. Come back to the theater, but buy a subscription, please.
Well, and Dean, you talked about this. Hillary touched on it. Jim, you touched on it as well. I'm excited to say, and that's about safety, and I'm excited to say that one of the top 10 trends by TRG Arts was that the 20s will roar again. They quote and state that as the pandemic Wayne's gathering will be the single most important activity people will engage in, and the arts will leverage and expand what it means to gather, whether in the theater or around events and organization that they love. So for anyone who is questioning the return to the theater and the importance of the safety measures that have been put in place, during the pandemic and even before the pandemic, to ensure safety, can I ask each of you to talk about your resident companies and the theaters that you operate in to ensure that safety?
Sure. So Theater Under the Stars is the primary resident tenant at the Hobby Center. We are not Broadway Across America, and we are not affiliated with the Broadway series at the Hobby Center in any way, shape, or form. We have our own programming, but we've been very fortunate in being able to work with our partners at the Hobby Centers who have been very conscientious and thorough in the work that they're doing. So there's been an enormous investment in infrastructure, everything from air filtration to water filtration, UV water filtration now that is going in, a lot of policies and protocols relative to contact tracing, contactless entry, those kinds of things. And then of course, all of the things that I think all of our theater venues have been doing this whole time relative to increased cleanings, making sure that, at least while we've been directed to by the CDC, we've been following, I think all of us, the science of it and working with our partners at Houston Methodist. So there is a lot going into, I think probably people coming back into the theaters will notice some minor changes in their experience relative to just, navigating buildings. But the goal has been to make sure that we're doing what we need to do to ensure a safe return.
I think a lot of people don't realize that there has been a direct connection with the medical authorities that a lot of arts organization has brokered. Dean? So
the Alley Theater owns its own theater, so we get to control all the stuff. So we've been ready to open since last year. We did all the protocols that the CDC set up originally last fall, believe it or not. The protocols now are loosening up quite a bit from what they originally were, and on all that stuff that we bought before, we've now owned. So, but I could tell you that the theater is safety first for all of our patrons, and all of us are coordinating together so that when you go, whether you're going to the Symphony or you're going to the theater or the ballet or the opera, all the protocols across the board, we're all doing the same thing, and ensuring that everyone's safety and everyone can feel nice and secure about the fact that the protocols are in place across every single venue. So it's time to come back, and we're looking forward to everyone joining us.
I really don't have anything more to add. As everyone probably knows, the ballet and the opera perform out of the Wortham Theater Center, which was shut down by Harvey for over a year. So we have brand new air handling equipment. It's state of the art. It is the highest quality that you would find on the market, and also Houston First is our landlord, and all of their properties are part of the Clean Houston protocol.
So if anyone's thinking about going to a restaurant or going to the supermarket, they can rest assured that going to the theater is safe or safer than just the daily activities. And I will say, Dean, something you mentioned about kind of the collaboration of the different communities, which is a very Houston thing, right? Band together in a very collaborative fashion. I can tell the audience that I was able to witness those collaborative meetings, and it was truly impressive to see how quickly communities of all different clusters came together to ensure that you were stronger together.
And I'll also say, not only the major institutions, but the smaller institutions as well throughout the city have been doing this. And we've coordinated and shared protocols with them, and they're doing absolutely the best they can do. So people are very aware of this and taking good care of their audiences.
Wonderful thing. Okay, so next question. Prior to the pandemic, the arts community were really talking about the need for new models of cultural philanthropy and programming that appeal to the values and priorities of new generations. Certainly, the effects of the pandemic forced these conversations into action. So my question to the panelists is, what new initiatives did you introduce? What were the key takeaways? What are you going to continue and build upon? I think this is a real inspirational part of the conversation. Dean, do you want to start?
I'd love to start. So the Alley has done a lot of video. I think we did 12 videos that we offered out to the community for free, and you can still see them on our website if you want to come and visit and see what the Alley is doing. But that is something that, you know, we're not replacing the stage with video, and so as we move forward, for us, everything is back on the stage. We will supplement things. We can do some video. We've hired a person on staff as a videographer. So we are going to be doing more video in terms of things that will supplement what we're presenting on the stage. And we do a lot in education. So we found that we could reach so many more students with our programming. So we'll still do in-school programming, but we'll do all throughout not only the Houston area, but we can go across the state with our videos and work with teachers and have fabulous programmings as well. So, and we're looking at things like digital, doing digital programs. So we'll probably still have a combination of digital and hard copies, but I have a feeling in the future, it's going to be, people will be looking at their programs on their phone in the future. That is probably something that we're going to be seeing.
Hillary, Jim?
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, you'd ask about new models of cultural philanthropy. We had seen a shift even before the pandemic, especially from our corporate partners, really wanting to see, really wanting to support and invest in our community programs and our education programs. And so we've seen a tenfold increase in our ability to deliver on those programs, really not solely because of our corporate and foundation partners, but you know, we knew that that is our audience of the future. So, and I think that probably Alley and Tuts has done the same, where the school systems have dropped off in arts education. We have really stepped in to fill that void, knowing that the workforce of the future has to be creative and has to be able to think in a creative way. So to answer your question, the model of cultural philanthropy has really shifted from a lot of those partners to our education programs. And because of that, we're able to do more.
Yeah, very similar, I think, narrative for us. Tuts runs 2 schools year round. One is a conservatory style training school, and the other is a school that uses the performing and visual arts to provide arts education and arts access to persons with disabilities. So both of our schools have been online in a digital sphere since the beginning. We've been fortunate that our community engagement programs, we've been able slowly over the last year to start going back into our community partners, taking our work back to them to meet them in their communities. But you know, just to echo what Dean said, and also Jim, I mean, there is an aspect of digital that will continue to be a part of our business model, certainly as we start looking at breaking down what other barriers to access might be: geography, transportation, English as a second language for us. We're putting some focus right now on that as a barrier to access to the arts. And so there's that. And then I think, you know, as we start to focus, as Tuts focuses on our return to the stage, it's looking at the stories that we're telling and what lens are we telling those stories through and who gets to tell those stories now. Knowing that with Tuts, the musical theater canon, quite frankly, is very limited in the creators, you know, especially the historic titles that you would think of, like South Pacific and A Chorus Line and things like that, written by a very specific demographic that is not necessarily reflective of the city that we live in. So we have to find ways to tell those classics through a new lens. But to Dean's point too, there is no substitute. I think one of our takeaways that we discovered is, despite the proliferation of digital content that we were putting out either through our schools or through our community engagement programs, and then we also hosted a few concerts with Broadway stars, there is no substitute for the in-person experience. People at a certain point get, I think the phrase is zoomed out. There is a palpable exchange of energy that happens when you're in the room breathing the same air, even though that's been taboo for the last year plus. But it's important. And I think people are really looking forward to that shared experience again.
You know, it's wonderful to hear each of you talk about the contribution beyond just the stage to the community and the next generation of patrons, artists, and administration for the arts. We're going to be a culturally significant arts city. It starts with every generation. Okay.
Holly, can I just add one thing? So I think that all of us learned very quickly that there is no financially sustainable model in pay-per-view of the work that we do. And so people should have no sense that we were able to sell our content this past year to keep ourselves alive. That is just not the case. But going forward, we know that a parallel digital component is important because it gives more depth to what people had in the live experience. So talkbacks with the artists, hearing directly from the creators of the content, that adds depth and to the experience. And so I know that will go forward with us. But I just wanted to mention, there was no financially stable model in just showing our content on digital screens.
I think a majority of us did it for free. Yeah.
It was during the pandemic. Your content was a great way for us to connect and help to supplement the entertainment and the education for people who were sitting at home. But certainly this is what your comments give us a great prelude to the next question, which is about the Shuttered Venue Operators Grant Program, which was established to aid small businesses, nonprofits, and venues. Question was, were you able to take advantage of this? Your organization's able to take advantage of it, and what did it mean to the heartbeat of each of your groups?
We don't know yet. I mean, that's the reality. We've all applied, but the majority, because of the way that grant is structured, for nonprofit organizations who have any kind of a fundraising component, the SVOG is tiered such that it has to do with percentage of revenue loss and 90%, 70%, and so on. And so I think, I don't want to speak for anybody else, but most of us are part of tier 3. So while we have applied, and we applied on April 26th, we won't know probably until the end of June whether or not at the earliest, whether or not any of us have been granted any of that. So it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I'll just speak for us, but it's kind of hard to say right now. The first 2 tiers have to do, and quite frankly, cater to institutions, organizations, venues specifically that don't self-produce the way that Tuts, the Alley, and the Ballet do. So we'll see, fingers crossed. We've all done everything that we could possibly do in order to avail ourselves of that support, which is critical, I think, for all of us right now. But we'll see. Hopefully we'll have something exciting to announce later in the summer to everyone.
So you're thinking possibly there could be positive announcements come out, in the calendar year.
I think it's possible. I mean, again, what the SBA has told most of us or all of us relative to the timing is that they are going to start making determinations on tier 1 applicants this week. I think it was supposed to happen last week, and now it's happening this week. And then 14 days after they start that process, they will start reviewing tier 2, and then 14 days after that, they'll start reviewing tier 3. So, I mean, in terms of determination and when money will actually be released to organizations across the country, I mean, you're probably looking at July, August at the earliest. I don't know, Dean or Jim, if you have any additional that you want to add.
Well, the thing that I'd just like to share with everybody is the arts organizations in the theater district. We all meet monthly, and as the heads. But in addition to that, our other staff meets, and our finance directors have been meeting all throughout the pandemic to work together so that all of us are applying for this money and will be successful. And it is a great cooperative. You know, we are all very cooperative. We're all nonprofits that are supporting the community. And so where everybody helps each other out all the way through. And so we've all applied for and gotten PPP money through that program. And now the shuttered venues, we're all hopeful that in a month that all the organizations will get some support from that. It's looking very positive. So we're very optimistic of it, but I just want people to know what a great cooperative effort. Not only are we doing all the things in our venues to prepare our audiences and making sure they're all doing the same thing, but we're also coordinating financially and everything to help each other to make sure that everyone's got the best shot of surviving this pandemic.
Hey, Holly, the only thing I'll add is it's primarily the 3 programs, the employee retention credit, the PPP, the Paycheck Protection Program, and the SVOG Shuttered Venue Operators Grant. We should all benefit from those. No one who received over $2 million in the PPP first round has received loan forgiveness. So that is an unknown. None of us has received notification from SVOG, and I don't believe any of us has received ERC money, but that seems the most likely of those 3 programs.
Wonderful, thank you all. So this next question will engage the 33 people who are on the call with us today. There are many studies and opinion pieces that credit a thriving arts sector with the ability to expand economic opportunity, create neighborhood revitalization, and inspire creative solutions to both local and global challenges. So as we continue to reopen and normal becomes new again, what can area businesses do to engage and support the arts? How can your community stand up and assist you?
Jim, you want to start?
Sure. So, you know, as you mentioned at the top of the call, the arts and culture sector is a huge economic driver in Houston, in Texas, and nationally. So just having that recognition, having a place at the table with our business counterparts is very important. But in the district, the performing arts groups that perform in the district, we bring so much to that area. If people have a choice of where to spend their dollars, and they can go to the district, which has great restaurants, great hotels, great arts groups, a great place to live. There's great new residential towers downtown. We're really furthering that, the business interests in the region. And our recovery is tied to the greater Houston economic recovery. So I just think that for folks to understand what a powerhouse we are economically, and that our recovery is their recovery.
Wonderful. Hillary?
Well, yeah, I mean, there will not be a complete economic recovery in this city or in this country without arts and culture being a part of that conversation. And I want to echo what Jim said, thank you for acknowledging that at the beginning. There are three drivers. And if you start looking at to thriving economies, and if you start looking at some of the national data, recent study, well, I say recent, it was done back in July, looking at the initial economic impact on arts and culture, but arts and culture ranks second in terms of value added to GDP in our country. It's almost 4.5% of our GDP. And so when you start looking at it in terms of what is that ripple effect, we're really good. And I think as an industry, we've done a really good job over time talking about the intrinsic value that we bring, but that's a little nebulous, right? And it's hard to quantify, and we're all results driven professionals. And so you start looking for metrics by which to benchmark success, and also to quantify things when we start talking about what does it look like? What does our recovery look like? I mean, I'll say the basic thing, which I think someone said earlier too, is buy a ticket. Consider us as an avenue for employee and client benefits. Be an advocate internally inside the companies that you work for when it comes to their corporate granting programs. We've seen a lot of shifting over the last several years away from arts and culture and even education to some degree towards other very important initiatives like social justice and green space and globalization. And those are really important, but to think that arts and culture are not part of those conversations too is not correct. We are part of it, and we can be, and we should be. And so being an advocate on our behalf, understanding the value that we bring beyond the intrinsic value, and that economic recovery is dependent upon us being and having that voice at the table. So thank you for acknowledging that.
So I'll do the practical side of this. I think it would be great if everyone's company or corporation would pay for half of a subscription, and then the staff person pay for the other half. And if we had that type of a program throughout this city, we would have thousands and thousands of people coming to the arts, and that's the best way businesses could support us. Businesses can also host groups at all of our events. We all have venues that you can have a gathering place to have hors d'oeuvres or a supper, and then go to a performance. And that is a great way to entertain and get people introduced to the theater. But I would just love to see a program where for all the organizations in the theater district, corporations would match dollar for dollar on the subscriptions and get people back into the theater.
That's a great idea. Next question. SMU Data Arts published a white paper called In It for the Long Haul. They recommended that arts organizations think through 4 questions in order to withstand the current and future challenges. One of those questions stood out to me, and that question was, what is the source of our strength? And this was, again, questions that they asked the community to ask themselves. So what does your organization do that is the most meaningful and relevant to the community? I heard education brought up earlier.
I'll go. The community in Houston is it's a broad thing to talk about. When we talk about the community, it's such a ethnically diverse, so it's made up of many communities. And what are we doing programming wise to tell, make sure that we're telling stories from lots of points of view? So that has been something that we have had lots of discussions about, and so that we're representing on our stages. When you look at the actors, you're looking at the diversity that you see out in the community. And when you're looking at the writers of the work that we're doing, again, it represents a variety of stories from different communities in throughout Houston. So that's one thing that's important to us, that we're telling Houston stories for all communities. There's a lot of outreach that we do. We have an El Zocalo project that we are doing out in the Latinx community, and that is another way that we can reach people. We have our education programs are throughout. Not only do we work with the schools, but we also work with community centers, and we are out doing programming. We're starting up a new program this summer where we're taking Shakespeare out into the community and doing programs. But we're trying to find ways that we can engage and do more and more. And so you'll see, for instance, we have a lot of our work is in Spanish as well as in English, and especially in the schools. Everything we're doing in the schools is Spanish and English. So that we're opening up our doors in that way, because we think that is very, very important. We have to reach out into the community and be engaged in the community. And so that's an important part of what we do.
Absolutely.
Hey, Holly, your question of what does our organization do that's the most meaningful and relevant? We bring people together for shared humanity, a shared human experience. In each of our organizations, people are watching other humans on stage at the top of their craft, dancers, singers, actors. And there's something incredibly special and incredibly empowering about that shared experience that is only one place at a time. And there's nothing like that, especially following a year, more than a year of isolation. To have that shared humanity is very important, how we come back as a community and how we heal as a community.
Wonderful.
Could not agree more. Yeah, this has been a really long, tough road for a lot of people, and it's been intensely personal. And one of the things that I think the performing arts does quite well is that we do build community, we do build bridges. And I think that's kind of how TUTS sees itself, is that we're not necessarily a destination, we're actually a tributary to opportunity for that kind of community building. And I think that's probably true for all of the organizations across the theater district. You know, we use musical theater and have, in terms of our strength and what we bring to the community, we use our craft to create non-traditional partnerships. And by way of example, I'll use, we're a member of the cohort of the Public Theater out of New York, and we launched 2 years ago now, which I can't believe it's been that long because we weren't around for a year. We launched Public Works here in Houston, and we partnered with Dress for Success, Wesley House, Wesley Senior Center, New Hope Housing, Combined Arms, the YMCA of Houston. Anyway, we have these non-arts community partners that are, we bring them together using our art form, and they create relationships and they create partnerships. And I think one of my favorite stories to come out of that, knowing that we're continuing it and going to move it forward, is the fact that there were a number of women that came because we brought these two organizations together. They had a partnership before, they just forgot. But because they had this opportunity to come together, there were a number of women coming out of New Hope Housing that suddenly became enrolled in Dress for Success. And that's why we do what we do. Yes, we love musical theater, and yes, we love entertaining, and we love doing that. But that kind of community connectivity, that's why each one of us does what we do, because we have the opportunity through something that seems pretty innocuous to bring people together.
Thank you all. Thank you all. So next question is, what artists, groups, cities, or venues are you watching, and who are you inspired by? Could be at any element or sphere, architecture of from what destinations are doing, what arts groups are doing, in inventive programs. But who are you inspired by, and who are you watching right now? Who should we model?
I think that Broadway's done a great job in making the case for being an economic driver for New York. And you hear almost daily about predictions of when Broadway is going to be back. And so, it's been this barometer of recovery all throughout the pandemic. And I think that that's great that they are such a part of the economic engine of New York City, that they're mentioned on a daily basis.
Awesome.
I think that's probably true, but I would also say that I think for me, it's like it's an amalgamation of a bunch of different initiatives and opportunities that organizations across our country have endeavored to do in order to keep the art form front and center. But I would also say we should be careful not to try to benchmark or compare ourselves to try to replicate something identically here in Houston, because we're very unique, and things that work in other markets might not work here in Houston for a variety of very important and specific reasons. And so I think when you're talking about the practical, tactical things like air filtration and touchless points of entry and all of that, yes, of course. When you're talking about the things that are supported or directed by people who are infinitely more intelligent than I am about, viruses and how they're spread and all of that, absolutely. But I think when you start talking about programming and things that appeal to people and things that are important to your community, I think you have to be super specific in staying in your broader community and addressing those needs, because what someone experienced, in I don't know, pick a city, any city, and is not necessarily the same as what we've experienced here in Houston. And I think our collective healing and recovery is going to be about us being very attentive to us.
Well said.
Houston is one of the few cities with 4 resident companies, and we talk to our peers across the country. Probably, I've been talking to them weekly. I'm sure everybody else has been talking to them weekly. We're on a variety of Zoom calls, and what's been interesting to me is the other cities are looking to us. They're looking to Houston to see what we're doing, and replicate what we're doing. We have shared out all of our protocols early on because we were ready to go last September. Across the country, and they've been replicated across the country because of stuff that we're doing. We have seen that across the board all during this. We've seen the fact that the Houston Symphony has performed all during this, and it's incredibly inspiring to see what they have done, and I'm one of the few orchestras in the country to perform. And so I think that what's been rewarding for us is to have others look at Houston and say, wow, this is pretty amazing what they're accomplishing, even during this very difficult time.
Wonderful. And my last question's coming up, but I want to remind the audience, please put your questions in the Q&A. So jump right into the last question. If you could go back in time to January of 2020, what advice would you give yourselves?
Knowing what we know now, or
knowing what you know now? Knowing what you know now, you go back and tell your younger self in January of 2020. What would you recommend?
Well, I don't know what I'd recommend other than to say, I kept thinking we were going to be performing last year. So I would have said, guess what? You're not going to be performing. but we've all responded to the best of our ability. And we probably would have done the same thing we're doing now. But I would have at least known that I wasn't going to get on the stage for a year.
Well, yeah, because it leads to revision after revision after revision. When you're looking at producing companies like the 3 of us and the other producing companies, it's years of season planning, and then it's months of lead up to ramp up to, all the pre-production work that has to happen. And so when you start thinking about your total operations, and the idea of shutting it down completely isn't possible when you're thinking oh, we're going to be back in a month, which then turns into, oh, we'll be back by fall, which then turns into, you know, after the new year, it'll be fine, you know? And so when that goalpost continually changes, I don't want to speak for Dean or for Jim, but I know we probably went through about 16 legitimate budget and scheduling cycles over the last several months just to get us to where we are today. And we actually have another one next week. So yeah.
So Holly, I would say 3 things.
Ooh.
Ooh, take a chill pill. This is going to be worse than you expect. It's going to take longer than you expect, and you're not going to make any money in pay-per-view. Those are my things that I would say to myself.
Well, thank you all for a wonderful Q&A. I'm gonna go right to the questions from our audience. First one's from Angie. She writes, she's so impressed by all the virtual programming that the organizations have been doing this past year. How will it continue to play a role as you move forward with in-person shows again? And do you think it's an opportunity to engage with patrons and or be exposed to new patrons?
Absolutely. I think as we've kind of all said, it's a really great the digital content for us, I think, is supportive of the main body of work, whether it's in our classrooms, in our dance studios, or on our stages. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think all of us have some intention of continuing that digital work, but it will never be a replacement to, and shouldn't be. And if you've never been to a live performing arts, you need to come. It doesn't matter, pick one and just come and experience that exchange of energy that happens. It's pretty great.
Yeah, I think people were very forgiving when we had to film everything in the actors' homes. That was the rules with Actors Equity, and pretty much they couldn't be next to each other. So I think we're very creative in doing it, but that's not going to be that satisfying of an experience for people. And we also don't think that filming on stage is that satisfying of an experience. It's all about the live product for us. It's all about live. So we can supplement and do things that'll get you inside the production and do things like that. But that's it for most of us. I don't think you'll be seeing a lot of video of at least performances. That's just not what we're about. We're about the live performance.
Holly, I think what we plan to do is just to continue to add depth to the live experience. So talking with the artists, talking with the creators, talking with the designers, and it also allows people who are not geographically in Houston to stay connected to the company, whether they're traveling, whether they've moved, or they just have an interest in one of the cultural companies of Houston.
Yeah, the one thing that I will say is that has been fascinating to us is our videos have been viewed in over I think it's over 60 countries in the world. So the video does open up, that, but as Jim points out, you can't monetize it. They'll all this stuff for us is offered for free because we knew we couldn't monetize it other than get support from contributors. But it is a way that people that are out of town can at least get a snippet of what you do, and there are ways that you can provide that as a service, but it won't be our performances the same way all the way through.
So next question, which I think you all are going to like. Carrie Childress wants to know, are season tickets on sale again? They want to purchase these for tenant contacts at Bank of America Tower to get them back into the theaters.
Yes, they're for sale.
Yes, they're for sale, and just call the box office. Yes.
Go to the website, call the box office, we'll make it happen.
All right, Carrie, we have a yes, and everyone else on the call. Well, I want to thank you all again for your time and your contribution to the community and the cultural fabric of Houston. I'm going to turn it back over to Bob.
You, Holly.
Let me thank everybody here, Hillary and Dean and Jim. I tell you, you make me proud, and frankly, it's what you've done. I just can't give you enough gratitude to go what you've gone through for this last year, but then your positive attitude now as we come out. And Holly, thank you so much for moderating our session today. I don't know about you, but boy, this was extremely informative for me. And I'd like to think I'm on top of this, but I realized how much I'm not when I listen to you all, but it's terrific. We deeply, deeply appreciate what you do. Here we are talking about being Zoom, and here we are saying, boy, we can't wait till we're back live. And so one just little piece of advertisement here is that we're looking forward to seeing you next month in a series of breakfasts. Actually, we're just doing it multiple times so we can keep the numbers small, but it's breakfast with Bob, as it's said around here, okay? And we're doing it on June 9th, 10th, and 15th. And I think you've probably seen the emails out. I know we've got a bunch of people already signed up, but the person of that is really a conversation. And it sort of starts with what we're doing, but more importantly, ideas, and sort of a free-flowing type event, sort of small group, so that we can make it work and make you feel comfortable and safe. But it's so much fun. Now, there was a suggestion that we move this to have it bourbon with Bob, but we're going to start out with breakfast, a little bit more tame, and then we're going to eventually we'll get to bourbon with Bob at some point. But let me thank again our participants, but also thank you, our members who've been with us today. We so much appreciate this time, and frankly, wish you all here a successful rest of the week, and here in a wonderful holiday weekend coming up. So thank you again, and goodbye.